it's Noel Powell from creationeffects.com, and today I'll be showing you how to make a mixed media animation in Adobe After Effects. So every effect that you're seeing in this carnival animation that's playing right now, you'll be able to do when we're finished. And rather than going through and recreating this specific animation, I'm going to focus on the techniques I used and how to customize everything step by step so that you'll be able to apply it to your own footage, since everyone's footage is going to be different. And best of all, I'm giving away all of the assets that you see in this animation, and that includes this animated magazine font. So you'll be able to use that to write out whatever text you want in your videos, even your commercial projects, that's okay. And that download will include 40 various collage elements such as animated doodles, some magazine clippings, some textures, everything you need to make a really good mixed media animation. And that's all 100% free, no strings attached or anything. I do have a much larger collection of effects that is optional. It's called Mixed Media Effect if you want to save time and get access to a huge variety of effects, all of them ready to be copied and pasted into your comp. I worked on it for months and it's affordable, so I'll be talking about that occasionally, and if you skip to the end of the video, you'll be able to see a bunch of example animations from that template. But some people just want to learn this stuff and make it for themselves, and that's great too. So I'll be sharing a bunch of techniques with you in this video that I used in that mixed media template. I'm going to show you how to take a texture image and animate it, which we can use in various ways in our mixed media animation. I'll show you how to make it look like your footage is printed on paper and give it a stop motion effect. We'll talk about how to draw on your footage in After Effects, how to composite paper cutouts and animated doodles on top of your footage. I'll show you how to add the animated magazine font, how to create a halftone newspaper look for your footage, how to create an animated torn paper edge, which you can add around any layer. That and a bunch more. It doesn't matter your skill level. I think you'll learn a lot about After Effects, and we've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Alright, let me start by showing you where to download the files. Just go to creationeffects.com, and I'll leave a link in the description. And then go to this freebies page. And this is the one we're looking for, the Mixed Media Toolkit. Just add that to your cart. And while you're at it, you can download this film dust too, because we're going to be using that in our animation as well. And check out the other stuff here too. Lots of free effects and presets for After Effects users. If you want to just add them all to your cart, go for it. People do it all the time. And after you check out, you'll be emailed a link to download this zip file. So we can open that up and take a look inside. Here we've got this magazine font. You can see it's huge file size because it has a transparent background. You can't see it, but they have a drop shadow on them too, make it look more realistic. So all of these I cut out myself. It's authentic, no AI or anything. And then we got a lot of textures here. You can always download more. I usually get textures from pixabay.com. These I all scanned myself though, and we also got a bunch of doodles and magazine clippings, and then we've got some animated doodles here. Some I made myself, some are public domain, and I just cleaned them up to use in my template. And then if you go to this README file here, there's some links, and then there's an expression here that we're going to be copying and pasting, just to make you aware of that. So let's go to After Effects now. And if you're following along in After Effects, you're going to want some kind of footage in here. I brought in this clip of a guy walking, literally just him walking for 30 seconds. It's nail-biting entertainment, but it'll be easier for us to see the effects on this rather than the carnival footage, which cut every 2 seconds. You can see I brought in my elements. We've got our film dust here and the magazine font, and I made some folders for our images. I'm going to make one more folder, call this textures. You can't just drag a folder into After Effects, it doesn't like that, so I'll just select all of my images and bring those into my folder. And the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to animate these textures, make them dynamic so that no two frames are the same. And we'll be exploring a lot of different ways of how we can use those animated textures throughout the video. So I'm going to create a new comp. We'll name this one aluminum foil. And my footage was HD 24 frames per second, so that's what I'll use. And I'll drag the image into there. And if I zoom out, you can see the image is quite a bit bigger than our comp, and that's good. We're going to add some expressions to this to make it randomly move all around and rotate. And you don't need to know anything about expressions. I'm going to tell you everything we got to do. Just open up the transform properties, and I'll alt-click the position stopwatch, and I'll type wiggle, and then in parentheses 100, comma, about 2000. So the first value is the speed. That'll always be high, like 100 in all of our wiggle expressions. And this one is the amount. So this image might shift its position up to 2000 pixels. And we'll also do that, we'll just copy and paste it for our rotation. And we can scrub through and see how that looks. And we can see here it moved so far that it exposed the edges. We don't want that, so I might reduce this to 1300. If you want to be safe, we could add a CC reptile effect. We'll just extend the edges of each side by about 500 pixels. And another thing we could do to increase the variety, we could duplicate this layer. Each time you duplicate it, each layer will have its own random results. And you could change the blending mode on this, maybe something like lighten. All right, so now that we have this template, we could just duplicate it for each of our texture images, and then they'll always be here and ready for us to drag and drop into our comp. So I'll duplicate this one, and we'll name this one burlap after that second image here. And we just need to replace this image, so we'll select the layer, and then hold down the Alt key for Windows or Option key on a Mac, and then drag the new image into the comp. And you can just repeat that process for each texture image. And here's another example of when you might want to duplicate the images. This texture is really light. If we wanted something darker, we could duplicate it a couple times and set the blending mode to multiply. And now I might move all of our comps into a different folder. We'll call it animated textures. All right, I should go over what the traditional method of making a mixed media animation is, just so we all understand what we're trying to imitate here. So the purest method of doing it would be to print out a few frames per second of your footage, physically printed out onto paper. So you'd have maybe 4 or 6 frames printed out on each sheet. And then you would just draw directly on the paper using paint, pencil, pen. You could add physical elements like glue or glitter, paper cutouts, whatever you want. There's really no rules. And it's actually a very forgiving format. The crazier you get, I feel like, the better it looks. And that applies when you're doing it in After Effects too, I feel like. So let's recreate that look of the frames being printed out on paper. I've got my walking footage here, and I'm going to drag that into the new comp icon. And now that we've got some animated paper textures, we can just choose one. I think there's 2 or 3 in here. I'm going to go with this canvas option. I'll put that behind our footage, and I'll scale the footage down a bit, maybe like 85%. And the edges are too straight, but we can roughen that up a little bit. We'll just add a roughen edges effect. Drag that on there, and we'll scale it down a bit. Maybe turn up the amount. And since each frame gives us a different canvas texture, we want those rough edges to change on every frame, and we can do that with the random seed control down here. I'm going to alt-click that stopwatch to open the expression box down here, and we can just type in random, and then in parentheses 1000. This is kind of like the wiggle. It just gives us a random number between 0 and 1000, and it changes on every frame. So we can also change the blending mode. We'll make it multiply. And depending on your paper or canvas, see, this canvas has quite a bit of texture and it looks okay. But in some cases, a blending mode might not be enough, so we can add a texturize effect. And we just set the texture layer to our canvas. We can turn up the amount if we want. It increases the contrast, makes it a little bit more 3D-like. Alright, we have our footage printed on the canvas, and let's add some film dust to this. I'll drag in my film dust clip. That's what it looks like, and we don't need that projector audio. I'll turn that off. But notice that this clip is only 10 seconds long, but we can fix that. Just go to the clip, right-click it, choose Interpret Footage, and Main, and we'll just set it to loop 10 times, and then we can extend that. And I don't really want dark specks on there because our canvas has already got plenty of little dark spots. So let's invert it. We'll add an invert effect. And now we can set the blending mode to screen. Alright, and now what this needs is a choppy frame rate, or I call it a stop motion effect. And we're going to do that on an adjustment layer. So I'll go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. And this will be more than just a low frame rate. I like to spice it up a bit. Let's add a transform effect. And we're going to add some wiggle expressions to position, scale, and rotation. And since it's on an adjustment layer, it's going to affect our entire animation or everything underneath that layer. And the effect I'm trying to imitate. So imagine someone was taking a picture of each frame on the paper. And so each picture is going to be lined up a little different. Some will be closer, some will be further away. So this is going to add that little variation to each frame and hopefully contribute to that whole crude stop motion look. So I'll alt click position and I'll do wiggle. We'll do 100, 15 pixels. And I'll copy that expression and I'll paste it to the scale property, and we'll change that value to 2%. And I'll also paste it to rotation, and we'll change the wiggle amount to about 1. And one more property that we can vary is the exposure. So maybe the camera was on auto exposure and each photo was slightly different in its brightness. So we can do that with an exposure effect. And we'll add the wiggle expression to the exposure property. And we can keep this a low value, I think like 0.2. Alright, if we played it back now, it's going to be very jittery. So we need to lower the frame rate, and you can do that with a posterized time effect. And you can just set your frame rate here. I like it around 6, but that's totally up to you. I would experiment with anything from 3 to 12. And I'll rename that layer stop motion effect. And one last thing we can do to this. I'm going to add a time remap effect to this footage. I'll go to layer and time, enable time remapping. And if I scrub through, you can see our time code. This represents our time code, and it's just progressing forward as we play the comp. But we can wiggle that with a wiggle expression. And I'll do a wiggle amount of 0.15 seconds. And let me solo the layer, and you can see what that looks like. So it's moving really quickly forward and backward in time. And so what we can expect from that, with the stop motion effect and that low frame rate, it won't play those 6 frames per second at equal intervals. It'll be more random than that, and we might not even notice it, but we know it's there, in theory. Okay, next let's work on writing or drawing on our footage. We can pretty easily imitate a bunch of different mediums like paintbrush or chalk or marker or pen or pencil. I'm going to turn off my footage so we can see our lines better, and we're going to do this with the pen tool. And I'll just draw a line from left to right, and that creates a shape layer. And if we open that up and then open the contents and open shape 1, we don't want to fill on this, so we'll just delete the fill. And then in the stroke options, we can adjust the color and the width. We can make it a little wider. And we probably don't want these corners, so that's the line cap option. We can just change that to round cap. And to give it that brush texture, we'll go to Effects and Presets, and Roughen Edges is what we want. And we'll turn up the amount of this border property quite a bit, maybe like 100. And turn the scale down a bit to about 40. And here there's a property, stretch width or height. If we turn that way up, it stretches it horizontally to give us that streak texture. We'll set it to about 25. And it's a little soft, so we can increase the edge sharpness to about 3. And give it a little more detail with complexity. I'll turn that up to 4. All right, and we also want this texture to change randomly on every frame. So it looks like on each frame we painted a new stroke. If we open up evolution options, that's where the random seed is. I'll alt-click that, and we'll do our random expression again with an amount of 1,000. And paint generally goes on a little thick, so we can add a bevel to this. We'll do it bevel alpha. And default settings are fine. And we'll name our layer Paintbrush. And we'll put that below our stop motion effect. And let's turn on our footage. And let's turn down the opacity to about 80. Now, as you might have guessed, there are some limitations to this. If I were to try and rotate it, you can see that the roughen edges effect doesn't rotate with the line. So this is really just for straight up and down or horizontal strokes. So we can put them like around these frames, or maybe I'll just put it around the border of the footage. And to do that, you can use a transform effect. And we can just use that transform effect to position it into place. And actually, I'm remembering something kind of important. It might be best to draw your path on the center, because right now the anchor point of that transform effect is down here. So if I were to rotate this, you can see it doesn't rotate from the middle of the stroke like we would expect. So what I'll do is I'll hit the G key, that's the shortcut for the pen tool, and I'll select these points and move that down to the middle. I'll reset the transform effect. Alright, so now I can position this into place. And I'll stretch it out a little bit. And I'll duplicate it, and I'll move this one down to the bottom. And if I had more time, I would add a little wiggle to the position and rotation of each one, but I think that looks fine. I might trim those. That's Alt or Option and the right bracket key to trim the layers. There are other ways of doing brush strokes in After Effects where you can curve them and go in different directions, and that's included in the mixed media template, but it's a lot more complicated, too much to show you in a tutorial. Alright, let's do another line. This one can be a marker. This will be a little bit easier. Let's use our pen tool, and I'll just start drawing a path around our guy here. And we'll open that up. And we can delete the fill. And in the stroke options, we'll decrease the width. And we can change the color to something dark for like a permanent marker, or let's go with something light, and it'll be like a highlighter. And we need a roughen edges effect. And here's a trick. If you want it to vary in width, you can do that with a roughen edges effect. We'll just turn the scale way up. We'll do like 300 and increase the border. You can see how it starts to get kind of splotchy. So that could be good for paint strokes. Let me add one more roughen edges, and we'll scale this one down to make it more detailed. And of course, you know the drill. We have to add our random expression to the random seed. And once you've done it once, we can just copy the random seed property and paste it to our other effect. And we'll change the blending mode. You can experiment, but I think multiply will do the trick. That looks like a highlighter to me. All right, so normally you'll probably want to animate the path to make it move with your subject. And we can do that with keyframes on the path property here. So I'll add one keyframe there, and I'll trim off the beginning of that layer, Alt or Option and left bracket key. And if we want it to last a couple seconds, I'll go forward and I'll add my last keyframe. I find it's best to always do the first and the last keyframes first and then go back and do the in-between frames. It just saves time. But we don't really have much movement here, so that's going to be easy. We could just use our selection tool and we can select however many vertices we want and then move them. And good enough. Now, something that I add whenever I have a path or a mask in my mixed media animations, I make the path wiggle from frame to frame. So on a shape layer, that's really easy. We can just go to Add here and add Wiggle Paths, and then open up the options. Wiggles per second, we'll set that really high, maybe 100. So detail, let me turn up the amount or the size, and we can see. The detail refers to how many little squigglies are in between every vertex. We don't need a lot of detail, so I would just turn it down to 0 or 1. And it's set to corners. We can change this to smooth. And now when we increase the size, it's like it's changing the position of the vertices randomly on each frame. All right, we'll just move that below our stop motion effect layer. And that's good to go. Okay, maybe we can do a couple more lines. Let's do like a chalk or pastels maybe. So the first part's pretty much the same. We'll draw our path and delete the fill, and I'm going to fast forward through all of this, but the final settings that I settled on was a stroke width of 55, and then add a roughen edges effect and set the scale to about 80, the edge sharpness to 3, and the scale to about 35. And don't forget to add your random expression to the random seed property, and you can copy over the wiggle paths folder from your marker layer that we made and paste that to this chalk layer. And you can set the layers blending mode to screen, and you should get something that looks like this. Okay, maybe one more kind of line. We'll make it look more like pen, and we can just we'll write out some text. I'll just start writing hi, and delete the fill, and we'll make this a dark grayish blue. We'll make it really thin. And to start our next letter, make sure the same shape layer is selected. And we can just drag that path into the shape folder with our other path. Delete that one. And I'll go get my wiggle paths from another layer, and I'll put it on my pen layer. And you can see how much it's warping it. We might want to turn that down. Let me rename this. And we just need to roughen edges to make it look more like pen. I'll turn down the scale. That's about right. Yeah, that looks like pen to me. I'm guessing this isn't going to wiggle around much. So the path is wiggling, but if someone were to write hi like this on each separate frame, it wouldn't always be in the same position like that. So one option, we can open up our shape folder, and every shape folder is going to have this transform folder in there. And again, if we rotate it, it's going to rotate from its anchor point, which is here. but we'll try and use our pan behind tool, and we'll just drag the anchor point to the middle of our paths. And let's see if that worked. Yep. So we can add a little bit of wiggle to our rotation and scale and position. That's better. So I'm going to start the layer there, and we can just use the layer's position property and add a keyframe to that. And let's have it track with the wall. So we'll go forward and just move the whole layer over like this. And we need to put it below the stop motion effect. And like I said earlier, it's very forgiving. If you see a little mistake, it's usually no big deal. Just leave it in there. It might even give it some character. And one other technique I was going to show you is how to make these lines draw themselves out. We can use our chalk layer maybe. And we'll just open up the contents, and we'll add trim paths. And it's really easy. We'll just set end to 0 and add a keyframe, go forward a bit, and we'll set it to 100. All right, maybe we should do some magazine cutouts or some doodles. Let's first just change the paper texture. We'll switch it up to keep things interesting. I'm going to duplicate my footage and my canvas texture, and I'll put those new layers at the bottom. I'll trim the old ones there, and I'll start the new ones here. And we need to reset the texture layer on our texturize effect. Make sure it's pointing to our new canvas layer. And we'll just find a new paper texture. We could go with this newsprint. We'll just select our canvas layer, hold down the Alt or Option key on your keyboard, and then drag the new layer into your comp, and that replaces it. All right, I'll open up my collage pieces folder, and we can drag a couple of these elements in here. I tried to choose really generic symbols and images that'll work for all kinds of projects. And the only thing we need to do to these is add a little stop motion effect to them. And we can actually just copy and paste the one from our adjustment layer. We just need the transform effect with our wiggle expressions on there, and we'll copy it. Well, we'll just copy it to 1 at first. And to reveal those expressions, we'll hit the E key 2 times fast. And I might turn these values up a bit. Just if you think about someone placing these cutouts on each frame, they're not going to put it in the same spot each time. All right, now we'll copy that transform effect, and we'll copy it to our other image. Maybe scale that one down. You could animate the position of these layers if you wanted it to move with your footage. I'll just leave it like it is. I'll trim the layers, and I'll put them below my stop motion effect layer. All right, what else? We could add an animated doodle. He looks like he's thinking about a really deep thing, so I'm gonna give him a little light bulb. I'll scale it down. And I might invert this so that it's gonna be dark on light. And we'll set the blending mode to multiply. And I think with the doodles too, we'd also want that stop motion effect. So I'll copy it from another layer and paste it. If we wanted this to be more consistent with our pen layer and make it rough, a roughen edges isn't going to do the trick with this, but we could add a turbulent displace effect, and it would have the same results. Turn the size down and the detail up, and add the random expression. Another way to use these animated textures that we made are as overlays. So we could just drag a couple of these in here. We could just have it above our footage and then go through the blending modes, hold down Shift and keep hitting the plus key, and you can just choose whichever one looks interesting to you. I saw one in the beginning there that was really dark. I kind of liked. We can try that. Maybe we'll add another one at the beginning here. I'm going to put it below my paintbrush strokes. And remember, you can download your own textures and just swap them out and just come up with an infinite number of creative looks. Alright, let's take a look at the magazine font now. You can see I've got some guidelines in here that will help you mask these out. Our stop motion effect is making it crooked, so turn that off, and then we can just use our rectangle tool to mask out whichever character we need. And just try and get as close to the lines as possible without showing the lines. It's probably best to get the first letter into position at the right scale and rotation and everything, because you're going to be duplicating it a bunch of times. So I'm going to be typing out all mixed up just because. And I've got my first character, so I'll just duplicate that layer. I'll hit the M key to reveal the mask, and I'll delete that one. And I'll do my next character. And I'll move it into place. And these characters already have the stop motion effect on them. They wiggle around and everything. So this is all you need to do. Just mask them and move them where you want them. And since we have two L's here, and I don't want them to always look the same like that, we can just offset one of those layers a little bit. Each character has at least 5 different magazine cutouts, and at most they have about 9. So you'll see 5 different cutouts before it goes back to that same original cutout. Now I'm looking for an X and it's not here, so we just gotta move the layer down until the next set of letters show up. I think I have 5 seconds of each letter. And if you need more than that, you can always duplicate the layers to make them loop. And this does include numbers and punctuation as well, and special characters. Those are at the very end of the clip. Okay, so all turned to poo, and that is not ideal. So we would just have to go back and trim the layers to be no more than 5 seconds long before these characters change. Alright, let's create another stylized look for our footage. Let's recreate this simple halftone effect, and we'll also do these torn paper edges. The torn edges are pretty complex to make, but once we do it, we can just copy and paste it to use it again, and there's a lot of different fun ways that we can use it. So let's duplicate our footage layer, and I'm going to shorten it, and I'll just solo that. To make the halftone dots, we need a grid effect, and we'll make it black. And we can set this to width and height sliders, and for the width and height I think we can do about 8. And let's invert the grid to turn the lines into little black dots, and maybe decrease the border a little bit, 3.5. And we'll set the blending mode to multiply. If we wanted to desaturate it, we could add a hue saturation effect and just turn the saturation all the way down. And one more effect, let's give it some grain. Add grain is the one we want. And for viewing mode, we'll set it to final output. And we'll increase the intensity a bit. And if you're interested in changing the look of your footage, giving it some really creative or artistic styles, the mixed media effect template does have a number of really cool artifacts, and you can customize all the looks with easy controls. It's a good way to take your mixed media animation to the next level. Just saying. And there are a lot of other text options included in the mixed media effect template. All the fonts and special characters and everything are already made for you, and you just drag and drop. My favorite is probably this scratched paper font. That's something you see a lot in mixed media animations. Alright, so we have our halftone effect, And it looks like a newspaper image, so let's add a torn edge around him so that it looks like we tore him out of a newspaper. We'll start by drawing a mask around him. And we'll apply a stroke to that. Just search for the stroke effect. And we'll set the brush size to 15. And paint style should be on transparent. Now we can roughen this up, and we'll use 3 roughen edges effects. And let's just do this really fast. This one will add width variation. We'll make the border 30. Edge sharpness 5. Scale 250. And we'll add our random expression to the random seed property. Random parentheses 1000. Alright, and we can just duplicate that one. And the second one will be for more details on the edge. We'll make the border 7. You could just hit tab to go to the next property. Edge sharpness will be 4. Scale will be 50. Complexity will be 8. And random seed, we've already got that. Let's duplicate it one more time. This one we'll set to rusty. And that already looks better, but let's turn down the border to 5. And turn down the scale a little bit to 30. Alright, that should do it. Now to add some light and dark texture, we're going to add a fractal noise. We'll increase the contrast to 200, brightness to 30, and we'll turn down the opacity to 25%. Okay, to get the image of our guy back, we're going to use an effect called CC Composite. And what this will do is composite our footage underneath our stroke. We just got to make sure the top layer is pointing to our footage layer, which it is by default. We'll uncheck RGB only, and the transfer mode should be behind. And as you can see, that composited our entire footage behind our stroke, but we can add an effect reference down here in the CC Composite effect, open up compositing options, and we'll just add a mask reference by clicking the little plus sign. Now this effect is only applied to the area inside our mask, mask 1. And we need to copy this random seed property and put that on our fractal noise texture. We'll just find the random seed property, select it, and paste. And I just realized that I screwed this up because when I added that effect, our halftone effect disappeared, but that's okay. We can fix that later. Let's just focus on this torn edge. We could add a drop shadow to this. 50% is fine, and the distance is fine. For the softness, maybe make it about 25. And that's a good start for the shadow, but the perfectionist in me is not satisfied. Since it's paper, I picture some parts of it being raised higher than other parts, and the shadow would be bigger or would come out further. And there's an effect called the Vegas effect, which can do something like that. We'll set stroke to mask path, and width, we can turn that up to about 40. And we'll change the color to black. And blend mode, that can go to under. For segments, we can bring that down to about 7. And start opacity can be 0. And we could adjust the midpoint opacity to whatever we think looks good. Now I can see a little bit of a harsh line right here, and I want to soften that up, and we could do that with a levels effect. Usually people use levels to brighten or darken things up, but if we change the channel to alpha, now we can just work on the transparency of that shadow. We'll bring the midtones to the right a little bit, and you can see what that does. Alright, I'm happy now. We can see the shadow is a little thicker here, and then it gets thinner here. We should add a stop motion effect to this so that this piece of paper wiggles around a little bit on each frame, and we can just copy that from our stop motion effect adjustment layer. We'll copy the transform effect, and paste it, and I'll hit the E key twice so I can look at my expressions, and I'll increase that position value and maybe increase the rotation a bit, and that's good enough. And something else we forgot to do, or you didn't forget, I forgot. No, I didn't, you forgot. I don't make mistakes. But we need a random seed on our Vegas effect to change up the shadows. Right here, I'll alt click the stopwatch and we'll do random 1000. Alright, and to get our halftone effect back, we're going to select these three effects: grid, hue, saturation, add grain, and we'll bring them down to the bottom, maybe before the shadow effects. And I think what I did in the grid effect, we can change the blending mode. Instead of multiply, we'll set it to, I think color burn works. And I kind of like that because then some of the dots show through on the torn edge, but not everywhere. Probably if we lighten the color a bit, it's even less visible on that torn edge. Perfect. Okay, and there is one more thing we can do. I want this path to wiggle, and we're not working with shape layers anymore, so we can't add that wiggle paths effect. And there's an expression that I found online, written by someone smarter than me. This is it. Dirow. Anyway, it works perfectly. And I've included it in the README file in your download. So you can just open that up, go down here and copy this part. And I'll hit the M key with my footage selected to reveal the mask path, and we'll alt click that and paste the expression. And this first line, amplitude, is the amount that the mask points can wiggle. And 50 pixels ought to do it, so I'll just leave that. Another thing to note about this, and I've got it in a note at the top here, while this expression is active, you cannot edit the mask. You can't move the points or add new points. To do that, you have to disable the expression, and then you can make adjustments. All right. I know that our guy doesn't move, but if he were moving, I would want to animate the mask to move with him and then enable the expression down there. But let's see how this looks. Okay, we're seeing color because we've got the blending mode set to multiply. I'm going to turn that to normal. Cool beans. I can say that because I'm a Gen Xer. There was a part of that animation where I cut the girl out. So let me show you how I did that real quick. I'm going to duplicate this footage layer that we just worked on, and I'll edit the timing here. Alright, I'm just going to delete all of those effects, everything except the transform effect, which is our stop motion effect. And I'll delete the mask. And to cut them out, we're going to use a rotoscope brush. And you can't use it in this panel. You have to double click the layer, and that opens the layer panel. And now we can select our roto brush and just paint on the guy. If you paint outside the edges, just hit the Alt or the Option key and it turns into a little minus sign, and you can just paint over that area to fix it. And as we play it, it'll analyze the footage and it'll do its best to trace it. It looks like it did a pretty good job. So now we can just close that panel, and we could put a new texture behind the guy. Maybe fabric. That could be interesting. Bring that down here, and maybe we'll add a like a paper border around this. We'll use this newsprint wrinkled animated texture, and we'll put it above our footage. And I'll use my pen tool to draw a mask. I'll make it kind of rough, maybe like as if a kid cut it out with scissors. I'll hit the M key to reveal the mask, and we can invert it. And now we can copy and paste our effects to give a torn paper edge. So we'll go back to this layer. This was the one with the halftone effect, and Let me close all of those. We'll just copy all of them except for our halftone effects, which were these three. Copy that and then paste it to our paper texture. And to get rid of these gaps here, we can increase the stroke a little bit. And in the CC composite effect, we just need to make sure that it's pointing to the right layer, because once you copy it, it's going to be still referencing the old layer. So we'll set this to newsprint wrinkled. And the color doesn't seem quite right to me. I'm going to add a tritone effect or a tint effect. And we'll put this right before the CC composite effect. And for map white 2, we're going to select a color from the paper so that it matches, but we'll just make it lighter. That's a little better. And I want my mask to wiggle. Doesn't everybody? I mean, who wouldn't? So I'll go back to that other footage layer and I'll reveal that expression, and so we can just copy and paste it. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Now, this whole thing with the paper layered on top of paper on top of fabric, it's kind of different from what you would normally see with a mixed media animation. Usually it's just a lot more just writing and painting on footage. But like I said, there's no rules. I can do what I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Alright, I paused the recording and looked at that original carnival animation that I made, just to make sure that I showed you everything, and it turns out there's one more thing I gotta show you. As much as I wanted to be done with this, and as much as you wanted to be done with me, I made a promise, so here we go. It's this scribble effect. You can't even really see what's going on here, but it's a scribble inside a mask. So let me show you how I did that. I'll go to the end, and I'll add a new solid layer. I'm going to bring this all the way down. And I'll draw my shape with the pen tool. And the scribble effect is what we need. I'll drag that on there. Alright, so inside these stroke options, you've got a bunch of spacing and curviness options. We can make this more messy by turning up these variation controls. And you can see if I scrub forward, it's random on every frame. I would add a turbulent displace effect to that and scale down the turbulence to roughen it up, since a roughen edges effect won't work on this. But that's the gist of it. That was a lot, but we only scratched the surface. And if you see yourself wanting to make more animations, you should definitely consider the mixed media effect template. It has about 900 effects that you can just copy and paste to your account. So there's a lot of stylized, creative looks for your footage, a lot of textures, a lot of custom lines and scribbles, animated doodles, magazine cutouts, animated text, and everything can be customized with easy controls. And I've talked enough in this video, so I'm just going to let the example animations play. And if you want to check out the template, just follow the link in the description. And that's it for me, so thanks for watching.